till 6. I know there's going to be more people joining us, but I like to be punctual, so we'll start in, it just turned, my phone just flipped to 6, so we're just going to start. How are you all tonight?
Good.
Good. I'm so glad to see you all. I'm super excited about what I have to share this week, that I'm almost nervous because it's so important to me to get this across. So we're going to be calm. And hi, Ned. So I want to try to wait until Daniel joins us, because Daniel had asked a question about tapping as well. He wanted me to go over tapping more, and Angie just sent a message that she'd like to go through some tapping when we start. And I think that would be a good way to start the meeting. But since Daniel's not here yet, and he's one that asked, I'm just going to talk for a moment, because I've realized as I was preparing this week's lesson, and as I've reached out in the past and opened things up for everyone to share, and people have been so awesome about doing that, I realized I haven't shared a lot about who I am. And I think that's partly because I don't know that people are really interested in what I have to share, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. And if you have any questions, I'm an open book. But I am 43, going on 19. I have a birthday next week on Thursday.
Oh, well, you look 19.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Thank you. I feel 19. But I have 3 amazing daughters. My daughters are, as of next month, they'll be 21, 23, and 25. My oldest daughter is married, and I'm actually at her house right now. She's in Europe with her husband, and so I'm recording this call from her house. Hi, Daniel. We were just talking about you.
That's good.
And let's see what else about me. I was married for 15 years. I've been divorced for 10 years. So I got married when I was 18, had my first baby at 19. And that's me in a nutshell. So if you are all comfortable, I would love it. So we have 5 other people on this call right now, and I'll just call on you in order. And if you'd like to share one thing about yourself, I'm going to go backwards on the order that I see on the screen. And Ned, it's 2 a.m. where he is, and he said he's just going to kind of observe because he's sleepy and needs to be quiet. So we're just going to wave to Ned in silence. Thank you for joining us, Ned. Daniel, do you want to share? If you want to share one thing about yourself, feel free, and if not, you can just introduce yourself.
Let's see. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm from Canada originally, in the prairies in Saskatchewan, and I moved to the east coast of Canada when I was about 13, so I had a couple big moves early on, which helped to show me that home is definitely where the heart is, and where you always have at least one good friend no matter where you go to. And Ashley is actually feeling unwell. She's got a bit of a cold right now, so she's having a nap. So we got married after we met in physio school, and we worked together for a couple of years in a hospital, and then decided to move to New Zealand to come and explore pretty much the opposite side of the world for a little while. And we've been loving it. The spot we have, you can see the sunny outside. We just went for a swim in the ocean, did some bodyboarding before doing this, so that was pretty awesome. And we're just working on creating a lifestyle here that we can financially stay here for as long as we can, because we haven't gotten sick of the warm winters just yet. So we want to stick around here for a while.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous. And it's Saturday. What time is it there?
It's 2 p.m.
Okay.
On Saturday.
I always feel like I'm in a time machine when I talk to people in New Zealand, because it's tomorrow there. All right. Thank you. Pretty, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us anything you'd like about yourself?
Okay. So I am Preeti, and I live in California, San Jose. I moved here in United States 1998, And funny thing about that, I can share. First time when we were coming through from the India to here, because I never study, my language is not English there. So I didn't know. Just one word I know is thank you.
That's a good one.
So then air hostess is coming with the drinks, and she probably want to ask me, do you want to have some coffee, tea, or juice? But who knows what she's telling to me? So I was like, oh my God. And my husband went to use the restroom, and I was like looking at the window as if something I'm really interested seeing. And then she was like, maybe she's tried two, three times, and she just left. And then I told my husband, I really want to have some juice. My husband said, she was here. Why can't you ask? I said, yeah, she was asking me something, but I don't know what she's asking.
Yes. That would be scary.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
So I now I know more than thank you.
Yes, you will. And you have a beautiful accent. All right, Russell.
Well, hey everyone, I'm Russell. I grew up on the East Coast in the U.S. in Massachusetts. I guess the most interesting or like noteworthy thing about me recently is that I worked for a couple of years after school as an engineer and saved up a bunch of money, and then I did some traveling, and now I'm trying to be a YouTuber. So I'm kind of a standard American kid who's trying to be an entrepreneur, which is the thing, I guess, but which is kind of where I ended up in life.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, Russell and I met at a business, what would you call that? A like an intensive business class where it taught us to, I learned so much about what I'm doing now, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right.
Like that whole week. It was my mind was racing the whole time. I would just like lay awake in bed, like with ideas like crashing through. Oh my God.
Yes, me too. It was amazing. Yeah. All right, Angie, would you like to share?
Well, first of all, I'm having a little bit of a connection problem. Is anybody else, like the voices are kind of cut up choppy? Is that just me or
I think
anybody else?
I think it may be your connection
No?
because when you speak, it's a little bit choppy as well. So if you want, you could try disconnecting and coming back in. Or
Okay. Let's see. I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Still learning here, everybody.
you could also, I don't know if it'll make a difference. You could try turning off your video and just telling us about yourself.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay. Well, while she's gone, I'll share a little bit. So Daniel, the reason we're talking about you is because you had mentioned that you'd like us to talk more about tapping. And Angie, just before she logged in, she asked if we could go through and do some more tapping. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that right at the start, and then we'll go through everything else. Have any of you been using the tapping and have anything you'd like to say about your experience? Ned's been using it, but he's just going to think about it to us. Yeah, so it's a really good way to release. Oh, Daniel, did you have something you wanted to share?
Well, just on what I've been attempting to use it for, because I've done it a couple times now, walking the dog, and first thing in the morning a couple days ago, and that was one time where I slept through the alarm, and whenever I sleep through an alarm, I get frustrated and need to get out of bed immediately if I do. So I attempted while walking the dog just doing some tapping, and I don't know, it might have made a bit of a difference, but it's hard to really know. So any of the times that I've used it, I might have had a brief improvement in the way that I was looking, but would very quickly kind of go back to where I was. So I'd have to use some other techniques or just movement or changing position or something else different to help. So it doesn't seem to be very effective for me, but I know it can be very effective from the stories that I've heard, and even teaching it to some other people. I've had some really great results with it.
I actually feel similarly about it, where I haven't experienced anything really profound myself. Oddly enough, when I made the video for it, I felt more teaching it in that video than I do when I'm just using it for myself. But I know that some people have experienced amazing results. So Daniel and I'm so sorry, I cannot pronounce your name properly. I'm Preeti. Okay. Our teacher is Mike Mandel. Oh, and Ned also. I can't see you, Ned, but I know you're there. So he's actually cured his fibromyalgia using tapping. So he had experienced fibromyalgia for many years, and he just did the tapping with the intention of tapping away the underlying emotion that was generating fibromyalgia. There's a school of thought that all the pain in your body is generated by an emotion, and I'm sure Daniel could explain this better than I do. But he just went through that tapping for, I think, 30, 45 minutes. He would tap until he felt a release, and then he would tap again. And he's been completely symptom-free for, I believe, for several years now from using that for himself. So it can be a very effective thing. I personally I like the bilateral stimulation better. There's others that I like. I really like, picturing the unwanted emotion somewhere in your body and changing the color, and that sort of thing is more effective for me. But the tapping works really well for some people. So I'm not seeing Angie, so we're just going to go ahead and move forward. I feel bad doing this without her, but so there's lots of different tapping protocols, and it's called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. So the one I'm going to teach you is the one that was taught to me by Mike Mandel, and it's a variation on the faster EFT. And the variation is that he first taps on the top of his head. So before we start, I'd like you all to think of an emotion or a feeling in your body that you don't want. So maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's fear, and put yourself into a specific time when you felt that feeling, and notice how strong that feeling is on a scale of 1 to 10. And then if you can, just turn that feeling up a little bit and make it even a little stronger. And when you've got that feeling, just go ahead and just say, I release and let it go.
I release and let it go.
I release and let it go.
And then you can tap between your eyes. I release and let it go.
I release.
I release and let it go.
Tap at your temple. I release and let it go.
I release.
And I can almost feel that. I don't know if you guys can feel kind of a lightning. Then tap under your eye. I release and let it go.
I release.
Release and let it go.
And then you can just tap your chest. I release and let it go.
I release.
Release and let it go.
Then hold your wrist and say peace.
Peace.
Okay, so now go back to that same situation when you were feeling that unwanted emotion, and notice where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 now, and notice if that's changed at all. Do any of you notice a difference?
Small one, yeah.
Good, good.
I feel like I'm more separate.
Good. I love that. Did you say you feel like you're more separate?
Yeah, like I can, if I put myself there, I'm still there, but I'm like across the room observing it rather than being kind of in the space.
That is really awesome. That's pretty much what you just talked about is going to be a huge part of what we talk about in the group today. So I love that was your experience. So essentially when you started, Russell, and probably all of us, I wanted you to be in that situation as if you were looking through your own eyes, feeling what you felt in that situation. So that's called associated. I've been trying to think of a way to explain this without using these words, but that's the best way I can think to say it. So when you're associated into the problem, you're really feeling it as if it's happening right now. And when you dissociate, it's as if you're watching it from across the room It's as if you're seeing it on a movie screen. So a lot of times when we have memories that are traumatic to us, we associate into them, and we're seeing them from the perspective of, you know, like the child who's huddled up in the corner, instead of looking at the child from across the room. So one of the first steps to getting change is to be able to dissociate. And that's essentially, so I've talked before, when you are feeling certain ways, it means that it's, you know, we have all these different states. We can feel anxious, we can feel happy, we can feel sad. So that's like that classroom full of kids, and whichever kid is standing in the front of the classroom is the kid that you are experiencing. So just now, Russell, you had that kid standing in the front of the classroom when you started tapping. And by going through and tapping, that actually helps distract you, because if nothing else, you're focusing on your body instead of that feeling that you were associated into. So it immediately puts the feeling outside your body and helps that kid go sit down. So you're able to dissociate from the feeling that you didn't like. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go through it one more time just for practice. And if anyone is watching this recording from home, I would love it if you would practice, because the more you use this, the more you're going to remember this as a tool in your toolkit when you need it. So we'll go ahead and just once more, just associate into that same problem or a different one. Daniel, did you have something you wanted to share first?
No, I was just getting my hand ready.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Since I wasn't here in the beginning, so as you're doing this, you're thinking about the thing you want to let go of. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So yes, you are focusing on the thing you want to get rid of. And then as you start tapping, it's actually going to sort of create both a release and a distraction from that state. So it just helps that thing that you're focusing on release from the body. It creates almost like an exhale. And as you go through, I can physically sometimes feel it, especially if I allow myself to feel it and pretend I can feel it. It's like I can almost feel a lifting or like a sigh. So let's just go through and tap again. And there's all different schools of thoughts. You can say nothing, you can say whatever you want. You can say, even though I'm feeling so anxious right now, I deeply love and accept myself. Tap between the eyes. Just let it go. I let this feeling go. Tap at the side. Whatever emotion you're experiencing right now, you can still deeply love and accept yourself. Tap below the eye. Just let it go. Tap your collarbone or pat your chest. Just let it go. And squeeze your wrist. Exhale and say peace. Peace. Does that change anything for you? How does that feel, Angie?
Well, actually watching you all a minute ago was helpful. I wasn't even doing it, but I was imagining doing it. I was watching you. So
I love that.
I've kind of done it before, but I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to actually be thinking, you know?
Yeah. And, there's really no wrong way to do it. We had talked before, there's different points that you can tap. You can try tapping on where you would do a karate chop. You can tap between your third and fourth bones of the third and fourth fingers. You can tap there. You can tap under your armpit, top of your mouth, bottom of your mouth. There's several points, and I can post some stuff about this. I'll write this down of some other tapping points.
And it doesn't matter side, which hand?
Nope, it doesn't matter. It's more about intention. It's about distraction. It's about release. So there's really no wrong way to do it. If you're doing this with the intention of releasing that emotion that is built up inside you, you're going to get the result that you want. And you can focus on the problem. You can focus on the solution. You can just focus on how good it feels to let it go. And you'll notice a difference. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we move forward? Okay. I'm going to just pull up my little notes. So this past week has been interesting for me because this time of year tends to be a struggle for me, just the winter time. And this is actually when I started learning hypnosis, was like about a year and a half ago in the winter, when I was really struggling and I just had to find a solution because I felt hopeless and discouraged. And so I found so many of those solutions and I'm feeling so much better. But the past week, I've really, like, some of those old kids from the classroom have tried to stand up. And I've worked with some really amazing hypnotists and worked with some really amazing techniques. But in this past week, I was watching a training again by Melissa Tears, who I talk about all the time because she's fabulous. And some things have really clicked into place for me. And I've been able to start using some skills and some really simple techniques that have created an aha moment for me. And the awesome thing is, it's stuff that I've done with myself and stuff that I can teach all of you so you can do it by yourself. Because my goal for this group is to teach you everything you need to solve your own problems and to move forward and get the change that you are seeking. So I'm not going to tell you just yet because I want to walk through a couple things to really help everything click into place when I do explain. And I'm so glad that Russell mentioned, you know, dissociating, because that already is putting a piece of the puzzle into place. So I've probably spent, when I count up the hours that I spent learning hypnosis, I've probably invested about 2,500 hours learning this stuff. And this piece is such a key, and I've heard it before, and the hypnotists in this group are not going to be surprised, but it's just been driven home in such a new way to me. And we had talked about the genie the first week, how our unconscious mind, one of our unconscious mind's jobs is to act on anything we continually impress upon it. So this past week, I've been thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? I had these solutions for everyone else. Why is it not working for me? Which is over dramatic, because my life is 100 times more awesome now than it was when I started learning this. But I was just telling myself this story of disempowerment and really kind of getting into a low place where I haven't been for a long time. And I read this post that Joey, who is in our group, put on the wall. He said on his wall, he said, "I struggled so long with bad habits until I learned a trick. Stop wanting to get rid of the habit. Simply focus on the benefits of a healthier habit and do that. For me, it was meditation. And since I started focusing on meditating more, magic has started to happen. What is your healthy and happy habit that you use as a keystone toward transformation?" So that post gave me this aha moment. It's like, Lori, you're focusing on what you don't want. I'm focusing on how crappy I feel and how I don't like winter and how this time of year is a struggle for me and what's wrong with me. And when you ask what's wrong with me, your genie is going to look for an answer and it's going to tell you all kinds of things that are wrong with you. But if you look for what's right and what's good and what's beautiful in your life, your genie is going to show you those things. So I thought, okay, for me, when I connect to my purpose and when I connect to something bigger than myself, it immediately makes all those other things become insignificant. And so I did a couple things. And Daniel, I don't know if it was you or maybe it was James Ledoux. I can't remember now who it was that said this, but I think it was you, Daniel. You said sometimes when you're feeling something, you just say, stop it or no, and you like push it away. And I thought of you saying that. And I just said, cut it out, Lori. Like, you don't need to figure out why you're messed up. You don't need to figure out what childhood trauma brought you here. You don't need to figure out why you're broken. Just stop it and focus on your purpose. And for me, this group is so much of that. Like, I love all of you so much. And I love what I've been getting out of bringing this group together and learning from you as you're hopefully learning from me. And I have all these big plans of what I want to do with this in the future. And so for me, just connecting to that and bringing myself back to that purpose completely obliterated, the problem that I was having. So it's just kind of, I thought it'd be cool to just do a brief recap on what we talked about in week 1, which is what you focus on expands. The more you think about your problem, the bigger your problem becomes, the more insurmountable it feels. But when you focus on the solution, what you focus on expands. What you resist persists. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to do this problem anymore, you're actually making it even bigger. Whereas if you just kind of let it move through and out of you and just welcome it and let it go and focus on something awesome instead, that problem is going to naturally take care of itself instead of growing. So point your genie at your purpose, and your genie will point you at everything in your environment that helps your purpose come true. So the specific struggle that I had this past week is the reason I came to hypnosis was to help myself not struggle with my weight anymore. You know, I've just been on this up and down roller coaster where I'll gain 60 pounds and lose 60 pounds, up, down, up, down. So I've lost hundreds of pounds over the last couple decades because I've just been so out of control in the past. And I've largely overcome that. But this past week I was really craving, and I just was like white knuckling and trying to figure out, you know, telling myself a story about why don't you have this figured out? And I was in the grocery store and getting food for dinner, and I was hungry. It was time to eat, but my mouth was literally watering thinking about the food, like literally like craving 100%. So it's like we were talking about when we started the tapping. I wanted you to really associate into that feeling and really feel it. And I thought, okay, I'm really feeling this. So what do I do? What would I tell my client? So the first thing you want to do, so I'll make a little PDF of this, but these are the steps. Step number 1 is associate into the problem. So really feel what you were feeling, you know, when you were having that lack of confidence in what you needed, or when you were feeling anxiety, or when you were feeling the craving, and imagine yourself in a specific time when you felt it. So if you're doing this work as you're feeling the problem, that's the best possible time to do it, because this first step is the most important part. If you're working on the problem and you're not really feeling it first, you're not showing your brain what neural pathway you want to rewire. So when you really feel that problem, look at that problem through your own eyes, hear what you're hearing, feel what you're feeling. That's step 1. So then step number 2 is to dissociate. So push the problem out of you. And there's so many different ways that you can do this. But what I did, I was walking through the grocery store. I had my dinner in my hand. I was getting ready to leave. And I just started focusing on the colors around me. I just started picking out colors everywhere I saw. There's something blue, there's something red, there's something yellow. And then I started focusing on the sounds around me. And I heard like a cash register, cha-ching, and some kind of a whirring noise in the background that I hadn't been aware of. And I can't remember what the third, but, and you don't have to do any sort of formula, but just start focusing on the things that you see, the things that you hear, and the things that you feel. So I could feel my feet hitting the floor when I was walking. It was such a strange feeling because I was just really aware of like the vibration of my body as I walked. And focusing on those things immediately dissociated me from the problem. When you're focusing intently, and this is what mindfulness is all about, when you're really focusing on what's going on right now, you can't be associated into that problem. That kid in the classroom has to sit down. So I was aware immediately that I was, that I had stepped out of that problem state. So step number 1, associate into the problem. Step number 2, push it outside, dissociate from the problem. Then step number 3 is to associate into what you want instead. And it's impossible to do this, step 3, when you're in the problem. You have to get out of the problem first to be able to see the solution. So for me, I thought about, okay, when have I felt empowered and strong and capable and able to overcome this? And I thought about when I had been working out that morning and I set a new personal record for my squats. So I squat with a squat rack not every morning, 3 or 4 times a week. And I had set a new personal record, and I felt so proud of myself and so empowered. And like sometimes when I'm squatting, I just picture Wonder Woman lifting the bar with me. And it's like my own inner Wonder Woman. And I just associated into that feeling. I thought, how amazing is it to feel that way? And I let myself really build it up. You can imagine turning the dial up on that awesome feeling. And as I was feeling that, then I looked at the problem. I thought about eating dinner that night, and I realized the craving was completely gone. So step 3 is to associate in to the resource, associate into the good thing. And step 4 is to look at the problem through that resource, which essentially breaks it. So you're shutting off that neural pathway. You're putting a boulder on that trail that the hiker goes down, that trail of the problem. You know, when you think anxiety over and over, when you think insecurity over and over, when you think pain over and over, when you look at that thing through the eyes of what you do want, you create an obstacle right on that path, and you can't keep going down it because you break the problem. And then what you can do is you can look at different situations in the past, associate into other situations when you have had the problem. But, and I don't mean associate and look at it through the eyes of the empowered you. So this could be, let's say you have a fear of public speaking, and you think about a time when you've been up on stage and you've been really scared. And then you step out of that situation, and if you can't imagine yourself being confident as a public speaker, there's a couple different options. One is you can go into the future and see yourself a year from now, and just imagine yourself having met your goals. Imagine yourself being the dynamic public speaker that you want to be, being, you know, just embodying everything that you want, and then float into that scene that you're looking at and see it through your own eyes. Look at the audience looking up with you at you in admiration and appreciation, and loving everything that you're saying and feeling connected to them, and just build that up. And then as you're that person on stage, then look back at that situation when you used to be afraid, and then find another situation and another situation. And every time you look at one of those situations from the past through the eyes of that person, you know, that kid that you want to be in the front of the classroom, it breaks it a little bit more. And it's something that it's literally changing the wiring in your brain so that you can overcome that problem without having to try. And then you can go into the future and think, okay, when is the next time I'm going to be on stage? And look at that, imagine that situation as that powerful kid in the classroom. Look at another situation and another situation. And then you can even go far into the future and imagine looking back at all these times in your life when you have done this amazing, amazing thing. So you're sort of rewriting your story. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Would you all like to walk through an exercise, like a version of this? So everything, almost pretty much everything that I have taught you, everything in my little videos, everything in our weekly calls is some version of this. So the tapping, you associate in by saying, okay, scale of 1 to 10, how bad can I make it right now? That's associating. And then the tapping, you're dissociating. And then this is also giving you the resource because it's creating that release and that space and that peace. And then when you go back and try to find it again, it's lowered. So you've broken the problem a little bit. So this is a form of it. The bilateral stimulation is a form of it. I have all these things written because sometimes when I start monologuing, I lose it. When we've talked about hearing the voice inside your head, the voice that's telling you, I can't do this, the voice that's reminding you of when you were in high school giving a speech, you know, that's associating in. So you're immediately associating into a memory of being insecure about speaking in front of someone. Then you can, if you change that voice, push that voice outside of you, imagine that it's Mickey Mouse's voice. Excuse me. That's dissociating from the problem. And then you can start telling yourself the truth. Start imagining another voice coming and telling you, you know, how amazing you are, and just really feel that, take that on. Then you're associating back in, and then listen to that voice again and notice how it doesn't matter anymore. How you just broke what that problem was saying and made it not effective in your life. Okay, so what I'd like to do, this is called re-imprinting. And I did this with a client last week, and it was just an absolutely amazing experience for her. And this works really well on a childhood memory. Maybe it's a memory that is even a little bit traumatic, or a memory where you maybe felt shame or insecurity or anxiety. Just that there's some troublesome childhood memory that you have that you could think about right now. But I want you to think about, and if it's, I'm expecting, like I have a couple memories that just recur to me over and over. So imagine that scene but push it outside of you and pretend you're watching it on a movie screen, and then lower it down a little bit so it's below eye level. And then as you look at that scene, and I'd like you just to imagine looking at that scene right now, just make it black and white because it's really old. And just take a minute to notice the you, the little you in that scene. And notice how old you are. And then as you look at that scene, you with all your resources, with all your learnings, with all that you now know, what do you sense that the child in that scene needs? You can just answer in your own mind. Think about what that child could have, that little you, that would make all the difference. And now just imagine that feeling that you want for the child in your own body. And if you have trouble accessing it for yourself, you can imagine someone else who has that resource. Imagine them giving it to you. Let yourself really feel that amazing feeling. And now send that feeling to the little you in that picture. And see the little you trying it on. And notice what changes. And as you're looking, you'll have that picture down a little bit low so that you're looking down at that picture and seeing it beneath you. That helps it feel less scary. And notice if there's anyone else in that scene, maybe any adults. And ask yourself, what resources, would it be appropriate to send them resources? Is there anything that if they had had that resource, you know, maybe compassion or patience, that it would have made everything different? And if it's appropriate and you'd like, you can go ahead and send those resources to the adults in that scene. While the little you watches and realizes, adults have problems. And the little you watches things change. When that little you is clearly seeing things with those new resources, you can imagine floating into that scene and giving that little you a hug, comforting him or her, nurturing that little you. And then take little you up inside you so that it can grow up inside your heart with all those resources in place. That's right. And just notice the subtle shifts and adjustments taking place inside you as you create a space for little you to grow up with that resource. And you consciously know that we didn't just change the past, but what we did is we created a new way for the unconscious to see that situation and to see future situations that remind you of that situation. So now you can have a pause and choose your response instead of choosing an automatic response of anxiety or fear or anger. And when you're ready and feeling great, you can smile and wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes and come back to now. How was that?
It was interesting.
Yeah. It's amazing how pushing our memories outside of us and changing the way we see them really changes the way it drains the emotion from the memory. So the memory is still there. We don't change the memory, but we drain the emotion, which equips us to have what we need to deal with it in an empowering way.
I'll share what my experience was just with that, because it took me a while to think of something, but I brought myself to a memory from high school. When I was in high school, I had very little confidence. I was the geeky guy that was just getting into sports, but was just kind of had my few friends, and I had really bad acne that I needed to go to dermatologists, and also overcoming some at that time too. So there was a lot of things going on. And I remember one moment, I don't remember what happened before or afterwards, but I just remember one of the people in my class just calling me pizza face. And it was one of those things that really kind of resonated and stuck with me. And every once in a while, I'll remember that. And with the initial guidance that you're going through with the associating and disassociating, it was difficult for me to even, like, I have a bit of difficulty with visualizing, so I kind of followed along and I didn't feel too much. But then when you said about going in and embracing that you and lifting them out of that situation, and giving them all those resources to help to continue those lessons going forward, I definitely felt like welled up a little bit of emotion. That it was nice to be able to, like, not necessarily see, but the feelings, because I am a very kinesthetic person. That's where I was brought into that experience and felt that that little bit of I would say acceptance or overcoming that kind of concern. I feel better after for that. So that was cool.
That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I struggle as well with visualizing. I don't really see see things like I would in a dream. And so what's helped me is, for exercises like this, when they say, look at it out there, I look and I don't see anything. But this sounds so weird, but when I finally figured out to do this, it made a huge difference. I just pretend I'm seeing it. I pretend I'm watching it, even though nothing is happening. And it really makes a difference. And the crazy thing is my dreams at night have become more vivid. And I feel like I'm going to maybe get to a place where I can visualize in the way I imagine other people can. But for now, it's you can just pretend you're visualizing and it has the same effect. It's so crazy how our brains work. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
I was just going to say, now I'm the opposite. I am very visual, and I think that's why there's some things I've hung on to so hard, because I saw it, I felt that I was there, and that's funny that you would say. But I do want to bring up one thing that's kind of not this, but the same thing, because you brought up Joey, and he mentioned on one of his threads about the Superman stance and doing it for 30 seconds. And
Yes.
So I've been doing that during the day, and it really does work. I know you've talked about the Batman and all, but it was just that, and he even turned his head to the side. And so I told my husband about it tonight, and it does, it really does. I taught my mom last night too.
Good. Yeah, it makes
Nice.
a huge difference.
With the power pose, there's a really good TED Talk. If you just search power pose TED Talk on YouTube, I believe the person who did some of the research with that, it was really quite interesting, because they took people and took blood levels before and afterwards of some of these stress hormones and some of these positive hormones, and that after doing those power poses, people had increased positive hormones and chemicals in their body, but also did better in aptitude tests or in mock interview type situations. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely, from watching that video that came out a couple of years ago, and the person's gone on to write books and other things too. But it's something that I'll do especially before doing a presentation. If I'm a little concerned, I'll just be a little bit taller. Even if someone's around, I'll just stand a little bit taller, and it definitely helps. So it's a good simple one, changing that posture to change how you feel.
I agree. Sometimes go ahead, Preeti.
Okay, so I have a question about this dissociation things, because I think my anxiety is because I am so associated with the in the body. But and another thing, because I am not, I can't see the pictures in my mind very clearly. So I don't know how to dissociate from the things for me.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. May I try something with you? Okay, so
Sure.
can you feel that anxiety right now? Can you think of the time when you most recently felt it?
Mhm.
And just, if you can, even turn it up a little bit more and just let me know where you feel that in your body.
It's in my tummy.
Okay, so when you think of that as anxiety in your tummy, what color, if it were a color, what color would you imagine that anxiety feels like?
Mm, I don't see the color.
And you can just pretend, you don't need to see it. You can just think, what color is anxiety? And there is no wrong answer. Whatever you make up is correct.
It's black.
Okay, black. So now just pretend, and you can look at me. So just pretend you're pulling that black anxiety out of your tummy. Just imagine that you're pulling it out. And then when you have it, hold it in your hands and check in and see, do I have all of it? And notice if you feel like you have all of it. Again, you're just imagining. How does it feel like you've got all of that anxiety in your hands?
I feel a little lighter in my tummy.
Oh, good. So now if you look at that black discomfort that you used to have that's in your hands now, what color would feel better? What color do you want it to be?
Yellow.
Okay, so
Yellow.
so we can just pretend that it's yellow now, and you don't even have to see it, just pretend. And if it were moving, how would it be moving? What if it was spinning? What direction is it spinning? You can show me with your counterclockwise. Okay, so pretend to stop it with your hands, stop that spin, and start spinning it the other direction. And notice that yellow as it starts to spin, and if there's any sounds that you want to imagine that it's making. And then you can just fill that up with peace or whatever feels like the opposite of anxiety to you, whatever you need. Pretend that that's filling up that space. And when you know that it's changed, just go ahead and put it back in your tummy and notice how it feels now. Whenever you're ready, taking all the time you need. That's right. How does that anxiety feel now? What happens if you try to find it?
Yeah, it's not there now.
Amazing, amazing. So that's a very simple, you guys, I can't tell you that what I just did with Preeti has been the most profound tool that I've used with my clients. And a lot of times I have hour-long sessions booked with them, and I'll do some trance work and I'll do some of these other really cool exercises, but I can almost feel the moment that that change happens. And it's in that moment when they pull it out and change it and put it back in, because it's something about the way that I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's something about the way that we wire in our problems. When you move them around in your body and you switch stuff up like that, it changes the wiring in your brain. And I've got rid of people. I feel arrogant saying that. I haven't done it, but I have led my clients to release a fear of flying in moments using the same technique, saying, where is that anxiety? Where is that fear of flying? And they find it, pull it out, change it. Sometimes they'll throw it away. Sometimes they'll put it back, whatever feels right to you. And it's gone, and they can't find it, and it stays gone. It doesn't come back.
So you don't have to give the name, right? When
Nope.
you are working. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to give it a name. There's so many different ways, and I'll post something with lots of different ways to dissociate too.
Okay.
But another way to dissociate is just, have you practiced the peripheral vision exercise? So that will dissociate you if you stare at one spot and just notice other objects in the room and your periphery. Imagine you can look behind your back, because when it creates mindfulness. And when you have that deep sense of mindfulness, you're not able to think about the problem. So peripheral vision is a really good way to dissociate. thinking about, like I did that one night where I just found all the colors. Or you could say, I'm going to find everything blue in the space around me and just go on a hunt for everything that's blue. And it immediately distracts your mind from the problem. And then you're able to associate into what you do want. So into that powerful, peaceful state, or that calm state, or whatever you want. So what do I want to feel instead of anxiety? And then you can imagine that. And a really good way to associate into the resource state is to even just close your eyes and imagine yourself 6 months from now having completely overcome that problem. Imagine what life is going to look like when you're on the other side and you have completely shattered that problem by creating such a strong roadblock that you just can't have it anymore. And then feel what that feels like. And then look at that, go ahead and look for the anxiety when you're feeling that amazing, calm, peaceful feeling, and you'll find that you cannot find it. And you're teaching your brain not to feel that anxiety anymore, and not to go down that anxiety path. Is that helpful?
Yes. And does it mean that, Lori, that because my anxiety it now moved from phobia to now like generalized anxiety, so because of that I cannot focus. So if I'm doing this, like exercising, whenever I feel like I'm not focused in working or something, I can do this and just see what happens.
Yes. So I would encourage you to maybe change, if you'd like, tweak your language just a little bit. So I just heard you say my anxiety, and so that you're taking on an identity. And so instead you could say that anxiety. Sometimes I that anxiety, and that immediately will dissociate you. So my anxiety associates it, and that anxiety dissociates it. So you can say that anxiety that I experienced. And so can you think of a time when you have felt very, very focused?
Yes.
Can you? And so just imagine being in that specific time, the last time or whatever time came to mind. Imagine what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. Notice how you're breathing when you have that focus. Notice your posture when you have that focus. And now, as you are experiencing that focus, think about anxiety and notice how it's changed. How is that?
Yep.
Good, good. Does anyone have any other questions before we move forward, or anything they'd like to share? Okay, so there's another exercise. Well, another thing, there's so many different ways to do this, but another thing you can do is when you're feeling the anxiety, just imagine pushing it outside of you, kind of like we did with the memory. You can do it with an emotion. Imagine pushing that craving for cigarettes. Think about where it is in your body. You can turn it into a color, or you can just imagine taking that out of your body, pushing it away, have it be a little bit down, because when you're looking down at something, it gives you power over it. You're elevated. A lot of times when we think about our problems, we think of them being up here and us being inferior to them. So move where you see your problem below your line of vision and look out at that craving for cigarettes, and then associate into, a really powerful no state. My clients when I help them clear up their smoking addiction, one of the things I'll do is have them imagine a time when someone says, I want you to go rob this store at gunpoint. What would you say? You would say, no, hell no, I'm not doing that. And so just really associate into that feeling of like, absolutely not, something you would never do, and really feel that. And then look at that craving and imagine your friend saying, just come have a cigarette with me. And you look at them and say, absolutely not. And you just look at it through the eyes of that, put that kid in the classroom, that no way kid in the classroom, and have him decide how you're going to, think about cigarettes in the future. So there's lots of really cool ways, and the more imaginative and fun you have with it, the better. But dissociating from the problem, I think, is one of the most valuable things that you can do, because when you're in the middle of a craving, It's because you're letting that kid stand in the front of the classroom. He's having a temper tantrum and he wants to sit there. And the quickest way, well, there's so many quick ways and you can find what's best for you, but one of the quickest ways is just mindfulness. How does my butt feel sitting in this chair right now? How am I breathing right now? How is the temperature of the room affecting my skin? What do I hear that I didn't notice before? What do I smell that I wasn't aware of before? And it immediately dissociates you from the problem. And then it gives you that split second or moments when you can say, okay, how do I want to feel instead? Let's see. So we've talked about how changing that external voice is a way of doing this. Tapping is a way of doing this. Okay, and then Angie, I hope it's okay with you. Angie put she wrote something up on the board today that I wanted to read because it's a perfect example of this. I don't know if it was today, but she was writing about how she has been working extra shifts at her job, and sometimes that can be stressful for her. And she said, I've been able to separate myself from it and remain calm, dissociate. I mean, heck, when you've been out in the universe with Tinkerbell and have witnessed the true size of your power over what used to seem so large, it takes on a whole new perspective. So Angie is already embodying this, like she's associated into that powerful Tinkerbell state. So you can be Superman or you can be Tinkerbell. Like just imagine you're that person. And when you look at that problem you used to have through that Tinkerbell's eyes, through Batman's eyes, through Superman's eyes, it changes. It doesn't look the same. You break it. You can't do it anymore. And
sometimes I'm Batman and Tinkerbell's in his hand too.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
I found some.
Yeah. And I, what I found is the more I do this and the more that I pretend that I'm all these amazing, awesome people, it's getting to the point where now, you know, even when I was getting ready for this call tonight, I imagined a lot of times, I don't know if any of you know who Brene Brown is, but she's just this beautiful public speaker that helps people and empowers people. And I've always imagined myself as Brene Brown. And now I'm getting to the point where I've inhabited my version of that so many times that now when I think about it, I think of me, it's like, but I want to be Brene Brown, but with a whole lot more Lori mixed in. And so it's very empowering to start to just, the more you let yourself feel and borrow that resource from others, the more it becomes your own resource and it's just who you are. Because you cannot imagine a resource. You cannot associate into a resource that's not one of your kids in the classroom. If you can feel it even for a moment, if you can imagine Batman being super confident, that means that that's a kid in your classroom who you can have stand in the front of the room. You can be Batman and look at the problem as Batman. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that we are really Batman, but you know what I mean. No trying to fly or.
Can I say, in thinking about the post earlier before the class about asking me if I wanted to do one of the classes, I thought I'd have to get a costume so I could dress up. And I thought maybe that's something I'll think about, you know, but everybody has to get in their costume.
That could be really fun.
That just seems to be where I go. If I use comedy or whatever, then I'm comfortable, you know, and that's what I, back in freshman year of high school, has made it silly, you know, and I remember that from our first class, how you said, the more silly, the better, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yep.
And I like to be silly, so.
Yeah. The more outlandish you are, the better. So Danielle, I had written down here, Ashley had asked me to talk about triggers. And she had specifically said that a lot of times on Tuesday, she feels triggered. And I've been thinking about this a lot since she posted that. And I know that this time of year is really a trigger for me. And you hear people talk about SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, I believe, where people just, with the shortened days and the cold weather. And I think that I'm reading a book right now. Did I write it down? It's called like You Are Not So Smart or something like that, which doesn't sound great, but it's about the neurology and the neuroscience behind why we do what we do and how we think we're being logical and we think we're making conscious decisions, but we're really not. So the conclusion I've come to, and this is just, I feel like there's probably a better answer, but I don't know it right now, is there's really no way to know what our triggers are. So if we use this tool and we learn how to dissociate from the problem, if we just catch ourselves doing the behavior, as soon as we catch ourselves, if we start to dissociate, then associate into the resource, then break the problem by looking at it through the resource, it's going to start to create that new neural pathway. So whatever that trigger was, whether it's this time of year or it's Tuesdays or it's, you know, when in the evening I like to go have a bowl of ice cream, you can, even if you're not aware of the trigger, when you start to notice that you're in that state and you break it, you dissociate and you look at it from the powerful state, it's going to fix the problem. And I'm sorry I don't have a better answer than that. I'm going to keep my radar up, and if I come up with one, I will let you all know. But that was a great question, and it's one I've thought a lot about.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. And there's a couple things that happen on a Tuesday, I think, that are some of those triggers, and it might be just going through and breaking them down individually. And I know with one of the things, I don't think I actually posted it when I said about the triggers as well. I was going to work, and I'm currently in a job that it's a good job, that I get to help people as a community physiotherapist, but it's not quite where my passion lies. So I'm doing stuff outside of work hours to develop my private business. And that's where my passion lies. So it's not that it's a bad job, but I realize that, like, I have headaches every once in a while. The left side of my neck, that's been for about 4 or 5 years, off and on, fluctuating. And I know that stress is one of the things that can make these headaches come on. And they're never, like right now, I feel fine. I didn't notice it at all sitting down, but I definitely noticed it earlier on today. So when I'm doing things that I'm enjoying, I never really feel them. So if I just fill my day with all kinds of awesome things, usually I'm not too concerned. But there's a couple of days where I didn't feel it, potentially over a weekend. And then I sat down at my computer desk at work, and it was like, boom. I was like, oh, this desk, like this actual environment of looking at this computer screen, this is a trigger of mine. And I was really that was one of the first times that I was really recognized that, okay, this environment, this is an actual physical trigger. And not only just those vague things like, oh, when I get stressed, I might get a headache, or if I'm not doing things I feel fulfilled, that might give me a headache. But it was really interesting, because then I laughed about it, and then went, and I think I might have done some of the color and shape and got it better. Like, I can usually make things feel a little bit better, but just not eradicate it. But now I think I just need to, anytime I'm thinking of it, that desk as that potential trigger, just try to fractionate it, break it in some way, and
Yeah.
I'll let you know how that goes.
What would happen if you even just now imagine that desk, and what would need to change about that desk for it to be okay? Like, what if you imagine that desk being covered in some kind of a light, or turning into some kind of an animate object doing a dance, or what does your unconscious mind give you?
That is a good question. And I just, colors is all I'm thinking of. So maybe I'll put some some bright pictures of colors or something around, and that might be a cool thing.
That's interesting. And I'm also wondering if there's some sort of a secondary gain thing where your mind is sending that pain signal because it doesn't want you to have to sit there and do the work.
Yeah. And the actual work with my patients, I enjoy that side, but when it comes to actually charting after working with the patient, or doing discharges, or those things at the desk, that I'm like, which is most people, except if you're in admin, are, I think, not liking the paperwork side of it.
Yeah.
That for me is just, it's hard to sit down at that desk and do it. Maybe
Yeah.
I need to go to a different desk.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Or create some sort of metaphor when you think of sitting down at that desk. What is it like?
I guess the first word that came to me was just constrained.
Okay.
That's,
And if constrained was a cartoon, what would it look like?
constrained was a cartoon. First cartoon that I thought of was Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. I don't know why. Maybe
okay.
it's that idea of going at the same thing over and over with the same result.
Yes.
Not quite being able to get to Roadrunner.
Yeah. So how would you change that to make it better?
I guess have Roadrunner come to me.
Huh? Yes. Very nice. So just try that on, see what happens. Notice
right.
how it feels to think about the desk now.
Yeah, and I feel good. I feel fine right now, and maybe I'll just put a little picture, because Roadrunner is colorful. Just put a picture of Roadrunner on
There you
the
go.
desk somewhere,
There you
and
go.
looking at me. It's not blowing the other way. I'll see it. I'll let you know how that goes.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, so while we're on the subject of Daniel, there's something Daniel's been on my mind a lot. And as I was creating this, and I'm always listening to new trainings and gathering new resources, and the training that I've been going through, she talks about how when we're sitting with our clients, if we picture our clients as having to change, they're so much more likely to get it. And this isn't, I'm such a big neuroscience person. I want to understand why here. I don't do a whole lot of woo-woo. So for me, I think when we hold an image of someone having the change that they desire, that comes across in our speech, that comes across in our micro expressions, it comes across on an unconscious level that we're not aware of. And so Daniel has an issue with his hand that he's looking for resolution with. So Daniel, if you're comfortable kind of just walking through this with me, what I would love to do is as you talk about your hand, I would like for us all just to think about Daniel, and even people that are watching this recording later, because I don't think there's really time or space with this stuff. Somehow it translates. Just set an intention of Daniel getting the change that he is looking for with his hand. So do you want to tell us just briefly about the problem with your hand? Just associate into that for a brief moment.
Okay. It's a condition called Mealer hiostosis in my hands, and it's a bone disorder that started when I was about 10 years old, just with the finger, but then has kind of gone to my whole hand and wrist. Surgery when I was 13, that was not successful, and a carpal tunnel release when I was 28, when I finally got the diagnosis with it. And for this, the actual bone condition, I don't feel too much for aches or pains, but I do feel some pain from the neurological, the bones, that basically the bones keep growing irregularly, and that's why it's in a strange shape. And so the bones have grown into my carpal tunnel, which has made my nerve impinged in a bit. So I started feeling some discomfort and numbness, tingling when I was a teenager that gradually built up. But I'm doing better now than I have in the past, even though this condition progresses. So I'm on the right path. But one of the things that Lori and I talked about for this is it's a rare condition. It only affects 1 in a million people. There's not much really known about it and what you can do to actually reverse it. And for most people, that's the only way to reverse it is surgery. But I made a conscious decision with Lori that I was saying this to my wife, for my whole life, I've been a guy that's had a condition that's been progressing until it didn't. So that idea that hey, well, maybe I can do some sort of mind-body types of healing connections to not only thrive, which I feel like I'm getting close to being able to do, if not already succeeding, but to actually reverse some of the effects of it. And if I can do that, then that's going to help to give me more knowledge that I can help for other people, and to just make my life more enjoyable too.
And I really love what you just said, because you just said, I've been a guy that's had this. So you essentially dissociated yourself from that condition just with that language pattern. And as we learned in the very first group, one of the tasks of our unconscious mind is to control all of our bodily functions. And hypnosis has been shown to be incredibly effective working with autoimmune disorders, with pain, with that sort of thing. Daniel and I we were talking about a book written by Joe Dispenza, who had a devastating, I believe, ski accident and destroyed his back completely. The doctor said he would never walk again if he didn't have surgery. And he used this sort of thing, talked to his unconscious mind, and he was walking, and he's totally fine now. So I just think it would be cool for us just to pretend that Daniel's hand can be healed. And just, Daniel, now tell us, so we've associated into the problem. We've dissociated by saying that problem that you have experienced in the past. So tell me, what would you like to experience with your hand? Just dream big, shoot for Saturn. And as Daniel's speaking, I'd like you all to create a metaphor for what Daniel is saying, or just see this along with him as he speaks.
So for me to be fully healed, the first thing would be to have comfortable feeling and to have strength throughout all of my movements, because I do a martial art that's a sword fighting martial art, so it's pretty physical on the hands.
Okay.
Also typing, and I do some manual therapy with physio, so I use my hands quite a bit, and I want to just feel safe and comfortable and confident with all of my movements, that I don't need to pace. Because right now, as a physio, I'm really great at pacing. If I do sword fighting, I won't do much for charting that day, and I'll adjust my day-to-day schedule. But I just want to be able to pick up a sword or pick up anything and just go to it without needing to think of the repercussions, and to feel just the normal aches and pains that we might feel with muscle soreness, but not any of the extras, the sharp pains or the numbness or the tingling or things like that. And then the last part, that's actually the least of my concerns, but it would give me a knowledge that I do have a really strong control over it, would be actually changing the look. And the deformity's never been too big of a concern, because I've adapted to it. But if I'm able to get more flexibility and actually reroute my body in a more powerful or positive way, that would definitely help to make me feel like I have more control over it.
Okay, that's awesome. So I would like to ask, if you would, all four of you, just to close your eyes. And Daniel, I would like you to see yourself a year from now having that strength and movement, being able to use your hands and feeling safe and comfortable and confident, being able to pick things up without having to pace yourself, and even having your hand, having it change the look of it, not having that deformity. And just describe for me how that feels. How does it feel to be on the other side of that, knowing that you have solved this problem and that your body has healed that and reversed that?
I feel fluidity with my movements that I wouldn't feel so much now. Definitely feel more powerful, and hopefully also just feeling that I could be a better teacher as well from it.
So I'm just getting a picture. When you say fluidity, I just see like this you're almost like liquid man, and you're standing up and you're teaching people. So if all the rest of you would just kind of just create some kind of a fun metaphor in your mind and send that intention to Daniel. And then let's all just take a couple nice deep breaths together. And you can all open your eyes. And thank you for doing that. And just, I would love it if any of you, if you think of Daniel throughout the week, just send him some fun metaphor of being healed and whole and having all these dreams come true for him. I don't absolutely know, I'm not touting myself as a healer, but I just think it's cool to experiment with this. And I think there's a really distinct possibility that this can make a gigantic difference. Just sending your intention and seeing someone is healed. And you can use this with anyone you interact with. I wrote down a quote. I want to make sure I get it right. So the way you see an individual in your mind is the best they will ever be in your presence. So if you see someone as broken, if you see someone as annoying, if you see someone as dumb, they're never going to be any better than that in your presence, because we're always reflecting these mirror neurons at one another. So see people as whole, see people as capable, see people as amazing, and they're going to reflect that back at you, and you're going to help them become more. And you can do the same thing when you're working with other people. You can see them as healed. You can see them as having the change that they are seeking, and it will make a huge difference. Okay, I have a couple little pieces of homework and a couple of closing questions, but does anyone have anything they'd like to share or ask first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to tell Dave that I thought of the Wile E. Coyote too.
Oh, that's so cool.
All right. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay.
I'll definitely get a picture of Roadrunner then, of Wile E. Coyote finally catching Roadrunner or something like that.
Oh, awesome. So I have a favor to ask you all. If you have time and if you feel compelled, I would love it if you just share something that you've learned either in this group or even in the bigger group that's helped you, just to give some feedback. It helps me know if what I'm doing is effective or helpful for you as well. And I'll create some kind of a PDF walking you through all the things that we talked about. So these will be tools that you can use whenever you need to. And then I think that's it.
I'll just give one little story then to finish things off, just with the idea of that positive intention, because I think one of the reasons why we connect fairly well, Laura and I, it's that we both like that neuroscience. We like the reasons, the physiological reasons behind it. And there's a really simple study. So noetic science is a field that I looked into quite a bit in the past, and it's the study of parapsychology. So the mind interacting with other minds, mind interacting with physical objects, or mind interacting with time and space. And there was a study that was a really simple one. They gave people a chocolate bar a day and tested how much they enjoyed their life before and afterwards. So each day they kind of had this little retest that they would do a questionnaire. And the control group was just the chocolate bar. And of course, everybody likes chocolate for the most part, and everyone got a little bit better on that control group. The experimental group, though, had a group of trained meditators, so it had something like 10 years at least experience, and gave that chocolate bar positive intention, so that the experimental group only got chocolate bars that were positively infused, if you would say that. And then it was all like a double-blind study that nobody really knew exactly which chocolate bars were which until after it's all done. But it showed that the experimental group actually had an increase in quality of life than just the regular chocolate bars. And it's one of those little weird little studies that you're like, really? Like it was just people just giving good vibes to a chocolate bar, and then they made a person feel better.
That's
But
so cool.
I take that, and you look at if you make a gift for someone versus you buy it. Even if it's a crappy gift, it usually goes over much better than if you just buy it. And maybe it's that positive intention that you put into it. That's the reason why people like it better.
Same with a home cooked meal. I think when you eat food that was made with love, it's more nourishing than something you would get down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything?
When you were talking, Daniel, it made me think of years ago on Oprah. She told or someone was on there, and they explained they had two groups of plants, and one group of plants were prayed for, and the other plants weren't prayed for. And obviously, the plants that were prayed for grew and thrived, and the other plants died. And so I've always believed. I've taken Reiki, and I believe in all of that. I have no problem believing that whatsoever. And I think it's pretty cool, actually. And that's maybe why this is so great for me to come to classes like this, is because I don't worry anymore. They're going to think I'm weird, you know?
No.
No.
No. Weird
Because
is
when
like
I laid on that table, and I asked the angels to hold my organs in their hand. And I've told that story before, that I believe that's what healed me, not that radiation.
I believe that too. And that's, I mean, if nothing else, that is a metaphor you created in your mind. And I'm not saying that it wasn't the angels, holding your organs in their hands, but just even holding that space and believing that creates a healing environment for your body. And I hope that didn't sound like I was discounting your experience in any way. It's beautiful.
Because I also pictured a friend, because I was so scared every day. I was there by myself, and I would picture my friend holding my hand. That made all the difference for me.
That's beautiful. That's so awesome. I love these groups. I love sharing with you, and I'm so grateful to you all for coming. And feel free to give me feedback. You can private message me and tell me things that you love, tell me things that you hate, tell me things that you would improve. I'm so open to feedback because I really want to help, and I really want to know how I can help people in this group setting. So I'm totally open to all that, you guys. All right. Have a fantastic night. Happy Friday, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.